This week, Player Attack spent some quality time with BJ Blazkowicz in Wolfenstein: The Old Blood. We wander around through Tim Schafer's return to point-and-click adventuring in Broken Age, and Jonny Robot finds himself trapped in a horror sandwich as he meets both Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees at this year's Oz Comic Con. This is Player Attack. Hi, I'm Jessica Citizen, and this week, rather than starting with the bad news, we're going to kick things off with something a little bit awesome instead. This is the latest gameplay trailer from LEGO Jurassic World, and it is appropriately full of dinosaurs.
It's a dinosaur.
There's some additional good news as well now that you're all inspired by the prehistoric beasts. LEGO Jurassic World is out on June 12 for just about every modern platform you can name. And while we're on the topic of good news, the hype for Fallout 4 continues to build as Bethesda remains completely silent. It now looks like Guillermo del Toro's Mirada Studios has been working on a cinematic trailer for the game, which, remember, we have officially heard nothing about. An artist who worked on the project updated his online CV a little prematurely to include a reference to the Fallout 4 cinematic trailer, something that online media jumped all over. Before long, the outlets who initially reported on the story were being served with cease and desist notices from Mirada Studios, which is a company created by Guillermo del Toro to work on CG projects. This is the most definite confirmation that the game's in development that we've seen to date. In the meantime, we are waiting less than patiently for Bethesda's big E3 showcase set for June 14 in Los Angeles. There's some more good news if you're the sort of person looking for any excuse to update your PC, as Oculus has revealed the recommended system specs for next year's launch of the Rift VR headset. Given that the Rift is a pretty hefty bit of kit, it's not surprising that it'll need a pretty hefty PC to run successfully, but what is surprising is that that PC will also have to be running Windows. A spokesperson for the company has confessed that development for Mac and Linux-friendly builds of the Rift software have been officially paused to make the Windows version as solid as possible. So, as well as Windows, you will need, at least, an NVIDIA GTX 970 or AMD 290 equivalent graphics card, an Intel i5 4590 processor, 8GB of RAM, 2 USB 3 ports, and a compatible HDMI 1.3 video output. If you do need to upgrade, you've still got plenty of time. The Rift isn't due out until this time next year. Of course, there is some less than great news this week. Indie developer Too Awesome Studio has had their Dimension Drive Kickstarter fail in a most dramatic fashion, with a whopping €7,000 pledge pulled at the last minute. Kickstarter traditionally protects projects from pledges that are cancelled within the last 24 hours, but in this case the company could do nothing as the generous donation came from a troll with a stolen credit card, meaning it was never a legitimate pledge. However, you can't keep a good developer down. Too Awesome Studio has picked itself up, dusted itself off, and restarted the crowdfunding project for Dimension Drive, so if you want to support this comic book sci-fi adventure, head to our website for all the details. In quick news, it was a case of life imitating art, if video games really are art, when a Sydney bank was robbed just 500 metres from a bar hosting a media event for the impending launch of Payday 2 Crime Wave Edition. Happily, there were no masks involved, and nobody was hurt, as two men strolled into the Elizabeth Street branch of Bendigo Bank, demanded cash and fled on foot before police arrived. But the crooks are still at large, and anyone with any information is urged to contact Crime Stoppers. The game, by the way, out next month for Xbox One and PS4, looks pretty great. We've been given an early look at the songs that will be in Guitar Hero Live, and there's more than a few tracks that don't seem to feature much actual guitar. Of course, there's the big tunes you can rock out to, like the Rolling Stones and Rage Against the Machine and Judas Priest and System of a Down, but then there's the odd inclusion of Ed Sheeran and the even odder inclusion of Skrillex. We'll have to wait and see how it all works. Guitar Hero Live hits PS3, PS4, Xbox 360, Xbox One and Wii U in the second half of this year. Just when we thought we couldn't get any more excited about the upcoming King's Quest reboot, we've been proven wrong. The Odd Gentleman and Sierra have announced the voice cast for the game, and the one and only Christopher Lloyd is confirmed to play Elder King Graham, the story's narrator. He'll be joined by Zelda Williams, Josh Keaton and Maggie Elizabeth Jones in the point-and-click adventure, with the first chapter due out later this year. And that's not the only voice cast we've been teased with. The Ratchet and Clank movie is also set to star some impressive Hollywood names. Paul Giamatti plays Chairman Drek, John Goodman is Ratchet's mechanic Mentor Grimroth, Rosario Dawson plays a member of the Galactic Ranger support team, and the one and only Sylvester Stallone plays Drek's villainous lieutenant, Victor Von Ion. Even more exciting news for fans though, Ratchet, Clank, Nefarious and Captain Quark will all be voiced by exactly the same actors who play them in the video games, so they will sound exactly the same as they do on the big screen as they do in your living room. Ratchet and Clank is set to hit cinemas in April 2016. And finally this week, everybody we know is playing The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, which launched around the world on May 19. It is one of the most eagerly anticipated games of 2015, and predictably one of the most pirated too. When early copies of the game started popping up on torrent sites weeks ago, developer CD Projekt Red took an interesting approach. Rather than slamming the pirates, the Polish company confirmed that everyone with a copy of the game, legitimate or not, would be able to unlock their copy on the same day with the downloadable release of an exe file. The theory is that people who have pirated the game will play for a while, fall hopelessly in love with the story of Geralt, and then pay for a legitimate copy. If that's what happens, that's awesome. If it's not, CD Projekt Red says that's okay too. For more information on any of these stories, or to keep up to date with the latest gaming news, head to playerattack.com. But for now, stick around, we've got plenty more still to come.
Papers Kester prepared for you are in the glove box. There. Okay. Let's go. And remember, stay focused, stay quiet, and follow me, right?
So, killing puppies really isn't my thing. I don't care if they've had a $6 million man upgrade for the sole purpose of killing me in the most painful way possible. I still don't want to kill them. I'd much rather give them some food, some cuddles, and a whole bunch of painkillers to help them recover from all of that surgery. Instead, in Wolfenstein the Old Blood, I killed every single dog with a steel pipe. Wolfenstein the Old Blood is a standalone prequel expansion to last year's hit The New Order, but it was both more and less than that. It didn't continue the incredible storytelling of The New Order, which was an in-depth tale of love, hate, and torture. Instead, The Old Blood has gone back to its roots, with a straight-shooting, first-person gameplay experience. There's not really much story to speak of and minimal character development, but really, it's not altogether a bad thing. Compared to The New Order, it is a little disappointing, but remember, The New Order was so far ahead of its time, it's not funny. But if you hold up The Old Blood against other games in the genre, it still comes out on top. For a little perspective, this one finally feels like a proper throwback to Wolfenstein 3D, a first-person dungeon crawler swarming with Nazis, and apparently their canine companions. Somewhat predictably, your task, initially at least, is to escape from Castle Wolfenstein. BJ Blazkowicz is an undercover spy, and it is a familiar, well-worn role. Go in, get the documents, get caught, fight the Nazis, escape. Just like the earlier games, as you wander through the corridors, you find weapons, discover armor, eat food, and find health packs. And yes, you do discover dog food, and yes, if you want to, you can eat it, but that's just further denying those poor puppies. Wolfenstein the Old Blood teaches you that the only thing you need to succeed in life is a piece of steel pipe. Technically, it's a piece of steel pipe that can be unscrewed into 2 steel pipes if you want to get fancy. This is the most versatile, useful weapon in the entire game. BJ uses it for everything: opening doors, bashing people on the head, climbing walls, hooking people's legs and then bashing them on the head, removing mutant mech armor and then bashing them on the head, and inevitably, killing dogs. We're waiting for the dedicated gamer who makes it all the way through the adventure using only a steel pipe. That one scene in the gondola might be a little bit tricky and you'd probably need to get pretty creative for the final boss battle, but I still reckon it can be done. The storyline itself is solid, if not terribly exciting. It's an alternate version of 1946, just before the Nazis win the Second World War and kick off the New Order. You, as BJ Blazkowicz, play through 2 missions. The first sends you into the belly of the beast, the by now all too familiar Castle Wolfenstein. The bad guy in this story? Rudi Jaeger, a sadistic Nazi dog trainer built like Dolph Lundgren who has no issues with feeding his dogs any humans that he finds unsuitable. The first mission, which takes you through caves and on gondolas as well as through the castle itself, is all fairly realistic, believable stuff, particularly if steampunk stylings enjoyed a resurgence alongside the Nazis as they spent all their time building mech soldiers. It's in the second mission that things start to get weird. Earthquakes strike an archaeological dig, destroying a town and uncovering a shambling mess of zombies.
Kessler, can you hear me? Helga's gone. Took the folder with her. I'm coming back to the boathouse now. Do you copy? Jesus Christ!
You must travel through the ruins, hunting down wine-swilling Helga von Schabs, dispatching the undead, and living out a few of your best Indiana Jones fantasies. Tip for young players, being kissed by flaming zombie Nazis doesn't leave you at all healthy. As I mentioned, this one is a bit of a letdown in terms of story, but that's only because the New Order was so great. We've called it Tarantino-esque and we've likened it to cinema, and I really wanted more of that level of storytelling. Unfortunately, it's just not there in the Old Blood. And yes, it's an expansion, so I shouldn't have expected much, but I was just so blown away by last year's that I wanted more of the same. That said, the Old Blood is certainly not all bad. If this game had only been released before the New Order, it's the perfect successor to the original Wolfenstein, and that includes the uncomfortably high canine body count.
Listen, I'd like to tell you a story. A story of another person your age, a young girl. She wanted to live a normal life, but she was chosen. She was honored with a special duty. Some people would call it a sacrifice, but what she didn't realize at the time was that it was a great honor.
While point-and-click adventure games have provided some of society's fondest gaming memories, it is a gaming genre that fell rapidly out of favour in the late 90s. For more than 10 years, we were treated to all sorts of great adventures. The Monkey Island series, Day of the Tentacle, Maniac Mansion, Sam and Max. And then, one day, the games stopped. In 2012, however, Tim Schafer, one of the godfathers of those first graphic adventure games, resurfaced with a crazy idea. He and his team at Double Fine wanted to create a point-and-click adventure like the ones we used to love. He wanted to make something clever and funny, a worthy update to the legacy he'd helped to create 20 years ago. And he wanted to know if anyone wanted to play. So he started a crowdfunding campaign, asking for $400,000 to create a new game, then known simply as Double Fine Adventure. Within the 30-day campaign, the project raised more than $3.3 million in pledges from more than 87,000 backers, making it one of the highest-backed crowdfunded projects of any type, and proving that Schafer was not alone in his love of the genre. Happily, the game's thousands of fans were also, for the most part, rather patient, as it took 2 years for the game to be released, and even then it was just the first half. Act 2 didn't see the light of day until late April 2015, 3 years after the Kickstarter project had been completed. But now that we can play both halves together seamlessly as they were originally intended, we are happy to report that it was worth the wait. Broken Age is the story of 2 young people, Vela and Shay, who live in 2 very different worlds. Personally speaking, I enjoyed Shay's story much more than Vela's, although they are intertwined. I played through Vela's Act 1 first and found myself mindlessly clicking, wanting to progress to the next part rather than wanting to live out Vela's adventure. When it came to play as Shay, however, whether it was the writing or the voice acting or something else entirely, I was on the edge of my seat wanting to know what happened next. Happily, in both cases, Broken Age plays through smoothly and didn't present any major challenges as I tried to progress through the story. There were, admittedly, a couple of puzzles that I had to get some help with. Once because I didn't realise I could move beyond a screen and so I hadn't discovered the obvious solution, and once because those knots were really hard.
Whole grain nutrient paste?
Feeds me, entertains me. I think in its own weird way it loves me.
I know it's hard. You've given up so much.
Uh-huh. But I've discovered it's also lying to me.
Oh, honey, you can't come in here. I'm working on a surprise for you.
Sheltering me from the conflicts raging throughout the galaxy.
The artwork for Broken Age is striking and gorgeous. The puzzles create the perfect challenge, and the writing has made me laugh out loud on more than one occasion. I do also have to call out the voice acting as a stellar high point. The game has the sort of voice cast gamers could only dream of. Jennifer Hale from Mass Effect, geek icon Will Wheaton, and Hollywood actors Elijah Wood and Jack Black all star, but my favourite cameo went to Alex Rigopoulos, former CEO of Harmonix, and both the voice and the face of in-game character the Deadeye God, a role he received as one of the most generous backers of the original Broken Age Kickstarter.
This can't be right. I hear him! I know that if I act on my instinct to fight, I would be putting my whole village in danger. So I'll ask a new question. Instead of, what if we fought the monster? What I want to know is, how do I kill it?
With Double Fine Adventure, we were promised a 21st century version of the 90s games we loved so much, and that's exactly what Broken Age has presented. It's clearly been a labour of love for Tim and his team at Double Fine, and now that both halves are available for Windows, Mac, Linux, iOS, Android, PS4 and Vita, there's no excuse for point-and-click fans, old or new, to not get amongst it.
Search the bowels of hell, but I found someone who'll make them remember. He may get the blood, but I'll get the glory, and that fear is my ticket home.
Let's start off with the first obvious question. What is it like to embody two of the scariest boogeymen in Hollywood history?
Well, you know, what's great for Ken and I is that the sort of incubation period on Freddy vs. Jason lasted from almost the inception of the original Nightmare on Elm Street until we did it in 2003. And we worked real hard on it, and Ken will tell you. I mean, Ken was more used to the cold weather than I was, but we were, you know, we had to go to I had to go work on his turf at Camp Crystal Lake, and by the time we got there in the fall in Vancouver, it was cold. We literally had a hot tub on the set to jump into between takes, but it was great because almost immediately after it opened, Ken and I knew, you know, we had a worldwide hit.
Pass on a little message for me, will you?
I had no concept, really. I'd worked on number 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, as the stunt coordinator and the stunt double and the fry cook that gets killed. And but when I interviewed for the stunt coordinating job on Freddy vs. Jason, and the producer had me come in, asked me if I'd like to audition for it, and I did, and really still had no concept until I walked into the trailer and I met Robert for the first time, and he said, "Well, Ken, we'll be seeing each other for the rest of our lives now." And what do you mean? And he goes, "Well, conventions." And here we are all these years later, and you know, we've spent so much time together, and I've gotten to know him and his beautiful wife, Nancy, and it's just been a fantastic experience, and I cannot believe what an icon Jason is all over the world.
We were in Paris at a toy store, an upscale action figure gourmet toy store, and it was managed by these good-looking young French nerds, classic gamer guys. But they're French, so they had a little more style, and they were all accompanied by these 6-foot Asian models. And we thought, man, this is a whole other world. We walked down the stairs into this toy store, and at the bottom of the stairs was a hand-carved, full-color, wooden, massive Hellboy, Ron Perlman. There was 2 floors of just Edward Scissorhands in there, stuff I'd never seen before. And it was fun for Ken, because I think there was a whole room of Jasons, you know, Jason salt and pepper shakers and Jason gaming stuff, and it was just really a treat for Ken to see that world was that big.
You've come from stunt coordinating and stuntman backgrounds. How was that transitioning into acting and taking on the big old juggernaut Jason?
Well, you know, during my career, because of my size, they were started throwing me lines. You know, I was goon number 1 and thug number 2 and stuff. And so transitioning into acting kind of came naturally. You know, Jason is such a physical role that they tend to cast stuntmen in that part in all the movies. You know, when you put on that costume and you put on that mask and you walk out on set, you feel that character, and you have to be that character no matter how much makeup or how much the mask covers. I mean, the mask had actually one fake eye, so all you ever really saw of me was one eye. But still, you need to bring Jason through, and Ronnie Yu really had some specific ideas on how he wanted Jason to move, you know, very, very slowly, I mean, painfully slowly, until he did something, and that really accentuated the kill or whatever Jason did.
Welcome to my nightmare.
I got to say, it was, you know, one of the easiest jobs I've had as a stuntman, because I had an actual stunt double. You know, because the movie was big enough budget that they said, you know, Ken, you have to remember you're an actor now. You're the actor on this. We can't afford to get you hurt. Until the last day of filming, and they had my stunt double, Glenn Ennis. They had him dressed up to come out of the grave, and they had me dressed up to come out of the van. They said, you know, maybe you could do the flying out of the van when the van flips. And I go, okay, I'm expendable. It's the last day of filming.
Tilt.
It's really hard for an actor to get out of bed the next day, because when you take the one thing that stuntmen do that you forget is that they do it over and over and over. They repeat it. You know, I could go through Sugar Glass once, but they ask the stuntman to do it from 5 different angles. You know, and in that 5 different repetitions, there's the odds go up every time, you know, that you can get hurt.
We were shooting the big fight sequence in the burning house, or the burning building. The flames were big. It was so hot that it was actually starting to melt the wigs on the stunt doubles that were there. And Robert was in there with me, and I mean, he'll tell you my costume actually started to smoke. It was so hot in there, and he was willing to do anything they asked him to do in there. So I was pretty impressed with that.
Ken was very courteous. He let me have my close-up first, because my makeup takes longer to come off, and I wanted to get back to the hotel for the last call. and so now, but I was still going to be. I was tearing some of the pieces off. I'm off camera. I'm behind the camera, but I wanted to be there for Ken, because I'm baiting him. I'm baiting Jason. And as Ken said earlier, you know, Ronnie Yu, the director, wanted him to move very slowly, and so Ken is really into the character now, and Ken, as a stuntman, knows how cool he looks, because the whole wall behind him's on fire now. And maybe 3 takes earlier, it was only maybe 3 to 4 foot high. Now it's probably 8 feet high of flame behind him. And like any actor, you know it looks cool. But Ken's a stuntman. He's wise. He knows how to count. And we've got a little bit of the gel on us. But I'm there behind the camera, and Ken's coming at me real slow, John Wayne walk, you know. And he's got the machete and great print. Let's do another one. Let's do a safety. And Ken goes back and gets on his mark and starts. And I just said, cut, because I could see Ken smoldering. You know, he had sort of like these flame epaulets. You know, it's like, would somebody put Jason out? You know.
And that's about it for this edition of Player Attack. Thanks for watching. Next week we delve into the weird and wonderful world of cosplay, chatting to Eve Beauregard and some of the other people who dressed up specifically for Oz Comic Con. Jonny Robot's got a few thoughts about The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, if we can drag him back into the real world to share them, and we hit the road with the brand new release of Carmageddon Reincarnation. In the meantime, you can catch us on playerattack.com. We're on Facebook, YouTube and Twitter, and if you've got something you want to say, send us an email, mailbox@playerattack.com, or just hop on our forums. Till next week, I'm Jessica Citizen, and this is Player Attack.